Okay.
Okay. Yep, we're going. Okay, so this for the first question. Uh, how long have you been working in the media industry? Let's say, how long have you been a photographer for?
Well, over 30 years,
Mm.
and I was an amateur, like kind of for the first few years, but then 22 years ago, I left my job to pursue my career full time,
Mm.
photography.
And what was it that influenced you onto starting photography?
Well, I suppose I was always interested in art, and I was always interested in artwork and exhibitions and photographic exhibitions. So I used to go to any exhibitions that be on in Dublin and the local exhibitions. So I really, had a great interest in even looking at landscapes, but I really love looking at portraits of people, a whole mixture of things. And I always wanted to do photography. Like it was always like I used to have a little compact camera, and I used to be, taking pictures of my mom and dad and things like that.
And what are some of your most favorite categories to photograph? Like, let's say, in terms of landscape, animals, people, kind of stuff like that.
Well, if you were to ask me, like I've done everything. I've done products in the factory, and I done it because you can make some money from that. But it wouldn't be my favorite work. I've done landscapes. I went out the beaches. I went out at all hours of the morning. For the millennium, the local Drogheda Independent asked me to do a special picture for the Millennium Supplement, and it was the year 2000, and I headed out to Altrada, and I went in the early hours of the morning. I waited there until the sun was coming up, and they actually used it in a full-size page. But the landscapes, I enjoyed doing them, but they weren't my favourite. No matter what work I do, if someone might ask me to photograph a room, or they might ask me to photograph a new house or the interiors of the house, but it's just part of the work, and you learn over a few years how to do it. But I always go back to taking people. It's
Mm.
my favourite.
And how has your passion for photography influenced your life?
It has changed my life dramatically. It has changed my life big time. It took over my life. That's really the truth. Every day I'm out with my camera on my back, and it's not about. I mean, you have to make a living, but it's not about money. There is great chances there with photography, but if you really are passionate and you really like it, you'll always kind of go out and you'll always have a camera. And I'm very lucky to be a person like that.
Mm. And in your time working as a photographer, what have you seen in the industry? As let's say in your time that you worked, what have you seen in terms of the photography industry? You'll say that's changed the most from, let's say, when you started.
Well, when I started, it was negative film, and there wasn't even such a thing as email. So if you were doing pictures for the newspaper, you had to go and take the picture, and you had to have a dark room, and you had to go and print your pictures, and then bring them down to the office or whatever you were supplying the pictures to. And that was the way it was done then. There was no, like now, where you can transfer an image immediately after you take it. Even what amazes me is now, even what I started doing, and I used to do, but if I'm doing a job now, say outside the drawer, I bring my laptop with me. And if I'm taking pictures, I'll actually email them there and then. Where before you used to have to come home, process them, and caption them. See, a lot of people don't realize what's involved. Even today, even though the internet's great and the email is great, if you take a picture and you're working for and you're on a contract or if you're working for anybody, especially a newspaper, you have to take the picture, you have to come home, and you have to caption the picture, say what the picture's about, and then email it to the newspaper. Where before all that, as I said a minute ago, you had to print the photograph at home, get a slip of paper, write the details and the captions, stick it to the photograph, and then give it to the editor, whatever which newspaper you'll be giving it to.
What is, in your opinion, what is something that's really important for someone in photography to learn that you feel people don't really consider quickly? Like, let's say, what's something that that is a very important skill for a photographer, but it's something you wouldn't think of immediately?
Two things. One is very important, your background. Your background is so important. Now, as I referred back to when you were doing pictures before, there was no digital. And if you took a picture of someone standing beside a pole, the pole would be sticking out of their head. And you'd have to go into a dark room and crop the photograph in the dark room. And maybe if it was sticking out of their head a good bit, you'd have to burn it and dodge it out. But now with digital now, you can actually physically take the pole out. But don't do that. When you're taking a picture, think of your background and your composition. And that's really the very important sequence. There's three of them. One is your background. Make sure there's nothing sticking out of anyone's head. Make sure that they're not burnt out of it behind you. And the other one is your composition. Well, people, I often see them going to get their photographs developed. And when they go to make a big size photograph, there's a piece of their head missing, or a bit of their legs or their arms are missing. Is to crop the photograph and leave plenty of room. Because when you leave a piece of room above the head, it means when you go and you want to print the photograph, you can do a big size. But a lot of people I see going to like a Harvey Normans and the pharmacies to get their pictures done, they be given out to who's they're dealing with. But what they don't realise is they're not leaving enough room. Some people chop their heads off and everything, Very important. And the other third thing is, out from having a picture exposed, it's very important for the picture to be sharp.
I remember that.
Sharp, if a picture's sharp, you can do anything. But if it's not sharp, you're limited to what you can do. My advice is being a photographer if it's not sharp. So try and get them things at the beginning right, and you've less work to do. So when you go and you process your photograph's there, and your background's right, you have a lovely exposed, clear image, nice and sharp, and away you go.
And how has the advancements in editing software, let's say for someone, let's say we'll take a freelance photographer, for example, let's say he's going off to do a job. And do you think with all these advancements in editing software like Photoshop, advancements and Lightworks and everything, do you think that changes how the photographer of today would approach a project?
Yeah, it would. I have friends in the business and they shoot in RAW all the time. And they like, as you know, a JPEG, and you know, with a raw file, it's far longer, takes you more time to do it. Personally, I don't shoot in raw. I shoot all my pictures on JPEG, even weddings and that. And a lot of them are shooting in raw, and they go home then because they know they can brighten and darken them and all that. Personally, I leave my work less to do. And if you follow what I told you there about what having to do, I love Photoshop, but I do very little with it because I use it for cropping and I use it for file information. But in general, I don't do very much with Photoshop. I shouldn't have to.
And do you think people do? Would you say think people do too much? Like that's it. They'll take a photo and they'll like let's say, as you said, you'll change sort of the brightness and the sharpness and everything. Do you think people, let's say, go and add too much, like and take away from what the
Yeah,
actual photograph they're taking is?
of course, it can be overcooked, and it's a bad idea. And you get people adding in skies and adding. That's okay for someone if they're doing a project and they a few days to do it, and they want to add, you know, a bluer sky than the sky is, and they want to add boards in. You see, you'd be coming to the wrong person if you're looking for that from me, because I just take what I see and I do very, very little. Sometimes, no matter even how much you take photographs, sometimes a photograph has to be tweeted, whether it might be a little bright or it might be, you know, it made to come down a little dark. But in general, there's not really much that you have to do. You know, see, everywhere, like, as I was explaining to you before, if I take a picture of you here and I take a picture of you at 10 feet, like, it's going to be different. That's the way the digital is. It's either, you know, and you have to try and balance your light, your camera, and your flash, and try and have the same image. But it takes a while to learn. But when you can do that, then you're able to do anything.
And how long do you feel it took you to feel like really confident in your photography, where like it was you wanted to put on like a public stage, let's say, like?
It took me a few years. You know, like I start after about 3 years. I was taken on doing big group shots, and I still do that today, big group shots, and I love doing it. And that's what you need to. I find after a few years, I started when you go into a room or when you're dealing with people, you need to first of all you need to be, you know, nicely mannered, but you need them to get to do what you want them to do, even if it's to someone to sit on the floor and someone stand behind them. Or it depends on the many people there is, but you need to command that. And when you're able to do that, they'll respect you and they do anything for you. And that comes with confidence. And you're in there to do the job. You have it done in a few minutes and you're gone. You don't go into a place with your thumb in your mouth saying, what am I going to do here? It doesn't really matter. You make your picture. It doesn't matter what room you're in, what venue you're in. You just look and you say, okay, I'm going to pick this space here, or I'm going to go over there. Or you might have 20 people, you might have 30 people, and you're saying, okay, we'll get a few chairs and we'll build the rest around it. It does come naturally. When you're doing it all the time, then you could take pictures anywhere.
Mm. And let's say if you were, let's say whenever you're given, let's say, a job to go somewhere and take photos, what are the sort of plans that you put in place before that? In terms of, let's say, do you sort of try to think about what photos are going to like want, like what stances you'd like them to take, uh, where you want
No,
them?
no plan, no plans. Because some place you go to, you don't know what they're like. Some people go, if they're doing a wedding, say they go to check out the church a week before. I don't do anything like that. I just walk with what I see, even if it's only a square room, square box. I'll go for it. And when you have confidence like that, you know, even though sometimes, it mightn't work, but most of the time it will work. It's all about communication. You know, if like you could be the worst photographer in the world, but if you can communicate with people, it'll help an awful lot. You get them doing what you ask them to do, and they'll move or they'll get up. One day I was at an event, and the Reverend Ian Paisley was there. The Taoiseach Bertie Ahern was there, and it was full of dignitaries. And there was a big sign on the stage to the right, and called the Battle of the Boyne. So, like, when you're going to get, the Reverend Ian Paisley, Bertie Ahern was Taoiseach at the time. So I seen the Battle of the Boyne. I wanted to get him at that sign. So I went and I asked him in a nice way, would he come up on stage? Absolutely no bother. I had them all up. I had the people from Northern Ireland up as well, and them holding the musket, the Battle of the Boyne. And I had them all, and that picture is an iconic picture now. But seeing the sign and by communicating and going to ask them, would they mind coming up on the stage? They done it willingly, and they were delighted to do it. So the communication is out from taking the picture. It's important.
And just for my final question, what would you say to someone who came up to you and said, "Oh, I really want to start photography"? Like, how do you think I'd start? And do you have any examples of someone saying that to you, saying, "Oh, I want to start photography. Where should I start from here?"
Right. Well, my advice to them would be everyone has their favorite, what they feel comfortable doing or what they like. Some people like taking landscapes, some people like doing wildlife, some people like doing portraits, some people like doing architectural work, but it's a personal choice. Some people don't like taking people, they're more comfortable doing the robins in the field and then at the board feeds or ever what, finches and all that. Some people like to go out and take a lovely scenery picture of the reap seed in the fields. Some people might like to do sport. Some people like to do horse racing. Some people like to do, I do horse racing as well because I walk at Belliston races and Layton races. And they're the only race courses that I do. They're on annually every year. And I can't wait to be doing that. I love it. And that's totally different than taking people. But then you might be doing the best dressed lady as well, so it's all interesting. But most people, some of my friends, and they were bought big expensive lenses and they start doing wildlife. They're doing it a lot and they love taking the boards in the garden and they love going to photograph foxes and the hares in the fields. But personally, me, I just like doing people. And everyone will find what they like doing and what they're comfortable with. If a person was really, really interested in doing everything and doing people say, and they want to become a press photographer, I advise them to get out every day and take their friends and take pictures of everybody if they wanted to do that. Go to events or go with someone that's actually walking, doing the events all the time, and go with them and see how they do it. And that's the only advice I could give.
Thank you. That's all my questions anyway. I'll just stop the recording now. Just see.
Yeah.